Rich people are moving to Dubai in droves, and it is no surprise that they're doing that. While the West is declining with increases in taxes, increases in costs, Dubai is an increasingly popular destination for millionaires and high earners to relocate to. But the one thing that this obviously does is that it increases the costs in Dubai. Cost of living in Dubai has been going up, property prices have been exploding, which is leading many people to say that while Dubai offers a 0% tax environment and now 9% for certain businesses, is it really worth it given how expensive Dubai is? So the key question then is, at what income level does it make sense to move to Dubai? Not just when you can live in Dubai, because as I've shown in many previous videos, you can actually live in Dubai extremely affordably. Whether you wanna live super affordably in Dubai is a different question though, because there are many places in the world, like specifically Southeast Asia, where I also like to spend a lot of time. This video I'm gonna give you a very precise idea using actual real math on how much I think you should make before considering a move to Dubai. By the way, another reason why so many people are relocating to Dubai is that they make it so incredibly easy. So many countries these days make it extremely difficult to go through the immigration process. In Dubai, all you have to do is set up a company for yourself, and you don't need to have any minimum income, any minimum capital, nothing like that, and then issue yourself a visa via that company as the director. So as a result, there's a big market for agencies who essentially help you go through this process. But the downside there is that a lot of these agencies are extremely bad. You should absolutely avoid them like a plague. They're not competent. They will not give you good service. They will make mistakes in the process, which will cost you a ton of money later on. They might set up your company wrong. They will be extremely slow to respond after you pay them. They might charge you hidden fees, things like that, which is why on this channel, I only promote one company, and that is GenZone. They are the best company in the market at the best price. What we do is we offer a Western standard service to the Dubai setup process. We will set up your company. You have direct WhatsApp access to my partners directly throughout the entire process and after you have gone through the process, which is why we have 5 stars in Trustpilot and on Google, because we simply offer the best service at the best price. And if you don't believe me, you can even book a free consultation with my team directly from the first link down below in the description. You can ask any questions you have. We can explain the process to you, and then we can move forward if it is the right fit for you. So when you think about when it makes sense to move to Dubai, it sort of depends on how you look at this. First, if you just compare Dubai to most of the major Western cities that a lot of the people watching this channel are coming from, there's still this perception that Dubai is like much more expensive than the place where you're coming from. I made a video where I talk about Australia's new tax residency rules and why many Australians should be looking to relocate to a place like Dubai. And I got this comment where it says like, oh, it doesn't make sense to move to Dubai. It's so expensive that all those tax savings are not worth it. Well, let's just look at the facts here. If we look at a major Australian city like Sydney and compare it with Dubai, what do we see? Cost of living, including rent in Dubai, is 4.7% lower than in Sydney. And excluding rent, it is 14% lower than in Sydney. So literally, even if you had no taxes in either place, you should still, financially speaking, live in Dubai because this is cheaper. Let's compare it to the city where I left, London. Cost of living, including rent in Dubai, is 24% lower than in London. 24% lower. That is before the tax savings that you're going to have. The average 1-bedroom apartment in city center is £2,196 in London and £1,830 in Dubai. So if the question is, when does it make sense to leave the West for Dubai? Again, if you're just looking at this financially, it is basically as soon as you can afford the move. We can see here in London, price per square meter to buy an apartment in city center is £15,875 per square meter in London and only £5,016 per square meter in Dubai. So 3 times cheaper for the equivalent property. That's going to get you access to better weather, more things to do, better restaurants, a growing environment, better people, and of course a much more modern apartment with better amenities. You often have a swimming pool, you have a gym in the building, over 3 times cheaper than London. And I know some of you might be saying, well, I don't live in one of these major cities. I live in a smaller city, so Dubai is going to be much more expensive than where I live. Well, of course, the UAE, which is broadly what we're talking about here, is not just Dubai. It also has other cities. You can go just 30 minutes away to Sharjah, where you get access to pretty much a lot of the same stuff, just a lot less glamour, a bit more subdued than Dubai, for much cheaper. By the way, all of this assumes that you have an online income, that you can earn the same amount regardless of where you are. Obviously, if you're coming to work a local job, then obviously you're going to need to consider what kind of salary can you earn in the UAE versus where you're coming from. Okay, so that is clear enough. But the more interesting question here is, when does it make sense to go to Dubai over the other alternatives. Because obviously on the channel I talk a lot about Dubai because that is where I am, at least most of the time, but I also talk about a lot of other places, especially a lot of places in Southeast Asia like Thailand or Bali that I also absolutely love. So obviously I can't give a comparison to every possible place in this video. I'm just gonna use the example of Thailand, specifically the city of Bangkok. I spent a month there recently, absolutely love it. Could well see myself living there at some point as well. So as someone who has stayed in both of these places, let's look at an equivalent lifestyle in Dubai versus Bangkok, see how much they cost and see how much you would need to make in order for the tax savings in Dubai to make sense over Thailand. Obviously, Thailand attracts a lot of the kinds of nomads who are supposed to pay taxes there. They become tax residents there, but they just think like, oh, they're not going to find out, I'm not going to pay taxes, and they illegally evade taxes. I never recommend doing that. It's not worth my peace of mind to do that. Just understand that in Thailand, if you do become a tax resident and you do work in Thailand, you have a Thai sourced income from a business that you run while sitting in Thailand, you are supposed to pay taxes. So the question here is, when do those taxes that you'd have to pay in Thailand go above the cost of living difference that you'd have to pay in Dubai when you would not have to pay those taxes? So everything obviously depends on your particular lifestyle, everything like that. But just to compare apples to apples, I myself actually tracked my cost of living over 3 months in Dubai for the particular lifestyle that I live as a person that lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in a nice area with my girlfriend. So this includes 2 people. And I actually lived a very similar lifestyle in Bangkok for a month. And I also calculated roughly how much that lifestyle cost me in Bangkok. And I can say that in Dubai, this lifestyle cost me roughly between $6,000 and $7,000 a month. And in Bangkok, the same lifestyle cost me in between $2,500 and $3,000 a month. So the difference here is roughly, let's say, $3,000 to $4,000 a month. So let's look at a couple of examples. Let's say you make $10,000 a month. In Thailand, what would happen is that your effective tax rate would be roughly 25% at that income level. So you would have to deduct $2,500 in taxes from that $10,000, leaving you $7,500. And from that, let's say you would spend $2,500 for this particular lifestyle in Bangkok, leaving you a net savings of $5,000. In Dubai, at this income level, you obviously have 0 taxes, so $0 in taxes, but you would spend, let's say, again in that lower end, $6,000 in cost of living for the same lifestyle, leaving you savings of $4,000. So in this particular case, if you made $10,000 a month, technically financially, you would be better off still going to Thailand. But what you need to consider here is that obviously as entrepreneurs, our incomes grow constantly, at least that is probably going to be your goal. So let's now consider that your income grows to $15,000 a month. In Thailand, your tax rate at this income level would be 27.5%, which will leave you after taxes $10,850 a month. And from that, let's say you would spend again that $2,500 in cost of living, leaving you roughly $8,000 something left after cost of living as well as taxes. In Dubai, at $15,000 a month, you would have again 0 taxes, and you would also still have 0 corporate taxes, by the way, because in Dubai you have the small business threshold of around $816,000 a year in revenue. If you make below that revenue, you're not subject to the corporate tax at all. So you would still have 0 corporate and 0 personal income tax. And with that, again, lower end of that cost of living of $6,000, you will be left with $9,000 in savings. So technically speaking, with these assumptions, somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 is where it makes financial sense to move to Dubai over Thailand in this case. And in a lot of these other Southeast Asian countries, tax rates as well as cost of living are going to be quite similar. So this is a good ballpark. However, what I would say is that in most cases, because your income is probably growing, somewhere around $10,000 a month or even a bit less than that is where I usually recommend that it makes a lot of sense to move to Dubai over a lot of these Southeast Asian countries. Obviously, you can optimize this further by just having a residence in Dubai for, let's say, half the year, where you have 0 taxes, plus that higher Dubai cost of living for only half the year, and the other half of the year you live in Thailand, for example, or in Bali or in Vietnam, where you get not only the 0 tax because you're not becoming a tax resident in these Southeast Asian countries, but also the lower cost of living. So this is actually the optimal way to do it. So let's say you make somewhere around $7,000 or a bit above that I think this is where it makes a lot of sense to have a setup like this, where you get set up in the UAE, you have it as a base for as little as 3 months or up to like 6 months of the year. And then for the other half of the year, you either spend time in a couple of different places in Southeast Asia, like in Thailand or in Indonesia or something like that. And then again, you essentially use these two bases to not only optimize your taxes, but also your cost of living. This is what I personally do. I'm based in Dubai mainly, but I only live there for the winter months. And then in the summer months, I go to Bali, I go to Bangkok, which are places that from a lifestyle perspective, I also absolutely love. And then if you take the average of the cost of living, it's actually much lower than that $6,000 to $7,000 range that I gave you before. And with this setup, I not only get the benefit of this fully optimal financial setup, but I also get a proper company structure that I set up in the UAE. I get my banking in the UAE, because the problem often in these more developing countries is that you're not going to get as high quality banking. You're not going to set up your company there. So you're going to need to figure this stuff out somewhere else if you choose to live there. So essentially all my financial and business infrastructure stays in the UAE for the entire year. Then I spend some time there every year. And then the rest of the time, I essentially just nomad around and like float above the system in a lot of these more affordable countries, which gets me the benefit of the lifestyle plus the lower cost in these places. So that is how I do it. That is what I have found to be the most optimal setup for me. Let me know what you think about this video. And I mentioned before that there are certain upfront costs that you're going to have to deal with when you're relocating to Dubai. So if you want to understand exactly how much it would cost you to relocate to Dubai, how much money do you need to have available to move to Dubai, then you can watch this video right here. I would definitely recommend watching this video next, because there are so many hidden costs that I wasn't aware of. So watch that video next, and I will see you in the next one.